In July 1955, Pan Am Flight 914 left New York City Airport en route to Miami. However, the flight never made it to sunny Florida. Without sending out a distress signal or leaving behind even the smallest piece of wreckage, the plane and its 57 passengers seemingly vanished into thin air. As the years passed without any sign of the missing plane, most people assumed the mystery would never be solved. But then, 37 years later, the impossible happened. Grab your popcorn and stay tuned to find out exactly what that impossible occurrence was, alongside a whole host of other eerie, mysterious voyages. One morning in 1992, at an airport in Caracas, Venezuela, air traffic controllers were going about their business when they noticed something very strange. Even though their radars showed an empty sky, they could clearly see a plane hurtling in the direction of the runway. As it got nearer, they noticed that this plane was old-fashioned and propeller-driven, a model that hadn't been used in years. Air traffic controller Juan de la Corte immediately made radio contact with the pilot and asked him to identify the mystery plane. The pilot replied that this was Flight 914, ready to touch down in Miami. When Juan informed him this was an airport in Venezuela, the pilot was horrified. He'd somehow traveled 1,200 miles away from his destination. And things were about to get even weirder. When the plane landed, witnesses could see passengers pressed up against the windows, wearing strangely old-fashioned clothing and staring in confusion at the modern aircrafts on the tarmac. After a long silence, Juan's radio crackled. In a hoarse voice, the pilot of the mystery plane asked him to confirm the date. Juan told him it was May 21st, 1992. As he spoke, he could hear the pilot breathing fast, clearly distressed. Moments later, the pilot flung open the cockpit window and began frantically waving away the ground crew, screaming that he needed to leave. As he waved his arms, something fluttered down from the clipboard he clutched in one hand. But before anyone could react, the plane was in motion. The aircraft crew watched in shock as, mere minutes after it had happened, the mystery aircraft sped off down the runway before climbing away into the clouds. Juan ran down to the tarmac and picked up the document that had fallen from the pilot's clipboard. To his shock, he saw that it was a calendar dating from 1955. In the aftermath, aviation officers were able to surmise that this unexpected runway visitor was indeed the mysterious Flight 914 that had disappeared back in the 50s. But even after a thorough investigation, they couldn't make any sense of the plane's sudden reappearance. And as for the plane itself, it was never seen again. So how can we explain the time-traveling plane? The most popular theory among fans of this tantalizing tale is that the plane accidentally entered a wormhole through time and space, transporting it somewhere else 37 years into the future. If you think that sounds crazy, it's worth noting that the scientific theories of scientists like Albert Einstein and Stephen Hawking mathematically support the idea that wormholes could potentially exist. But how? Well, imagine space and time as a sheet of paper with a point marked at either end. Usually, you'd only be able to travel through those points by moving along the paper. But if you fold the paper in half, bringing the points together, that's a much quicker way to travel between them. This is how a wormhole theoretically works. A space-time bending shortcut through the cosmos that connects two distant points of space and/or time together. While no one's really sure how a wormhole could come into existence, nor has anyone ever actually observed one, could this theory explain the mystery of the time-traveling plane? Before I reveal the truth, if you think wormholes were behind this mystery, click that like button. If you're skeptical, hit that subscribe button. And with the fascinating content I post daily, doing both is an equally good choice. Done? Great. Now let's find out the truth. As it turns out, the real explanation doesn't require complicated physics to work out. That's because, unfortunately, the tale of Pan Am Flight 914 is actually a vintage piece of fake news. First circulated by the Weekly World News in 1985. This tabloid was notorious for inventing mind-boggling stories in order to sell papers, including the story of a baby born with a wooden leg and the tall tale of a man who sued himself after he was hit by his own boomerang. In fact, the story of Flight 914 made such a splash in the 80s that the tabloid actually ran it twice more in 1993 and in 1999. It soon became an urban legend, circulated online by conspiracy theorists as evidence of time travel. But, of course, I wouldn't bring you here with the promise of genuine mystery and not deliver. While the case of Flight 914 turned out to be a hoax, that's not to say our world hasn't seen its fair share of voyages that took a turn toward the unexplainably bizarre. Stay tuned to find out just how peculiar some real examples of this type of thing are. because sometimes truth is even stranger than fiction. Bizarre Bermuda. Would you take a trip over the Bermuda Triangle? Over the years, this portion of the North Atlantic Ocean between Bermuda, Miami, and Puerto Rico has seen a number of planes and ships disappear in mysterious-seeming circumstances. None of these disappearances are stranger or more perplexing than the vanishing of Flight 19. In December 1945, a squadron of 5 torpedo bombers and their 14 crew took off from